Gopi Janavalava Girivaradari Jaya Yasodanandana Bradajandaranjana Yasodanan Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Vishnu Paramahansa Maharajacharya Sadasi Svadesi Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sakha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopida Shama Kunda Radha Kadagiri Govardhan Ki Jai Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Ganga Jamuna Tulsi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Samavetta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Go Premanandi All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Guru, all glories to Sri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasnaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvashesha Nirvadi Paschacharya Shatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 14, Verse 5. Pureha bhumam bahavopi yoginas tvad arpite ha nija karma labdhaya vibhudya bhaktyaiva katopa niyata prapadi rengyo chuta te gatim param. Pura, previously, Iha, in this world, Buman, O Almighty Lord, Bahava, many, Api, indeed, Yogina, followers of the path of yoga, Tvat, unto you, Arpita, have offered, Iha, all their endeavors, Nija karma, by their prescribed duties, Alabdaya, which is achieved, Vibudya, coming to understand, Bhaktya, by devotional service, Eva, indeed, Kata upanitaya, cultivated through hearing and chanting topics about you. Prapedire, they achieved by surrender. Anja, easily. Chuta, O infallible one. Te, your gatim, destination. Param, supreme. Translation, O Almighty Lord, in the past, many yogis in this world achieved the platform of devotional service by offering all their endeavors unto you and faithfully carrying out the prescribed duties. Through such devotional service, perfected by the processes of hearing and chanting about you, they came to understand you, O infallible one, and could easily surrender to you and achieve your supreme abode. Text 6. Non-devotees, however, cannot realize you in your full personal feature. Nevertheless, it may be possible for them to realize your expansion as the impersonal supreme by cultivating direct perception of the self within the heart. But they can do this only by purifying their mind and senses of all conceptions of material distinctions and all attachment to material sense objects. Only in this way will your impersonal feature manifest itself to them. Purport: it is difficult for conditioned souls to understand all the transcendental features of the Supreme Lord, as confirmed in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavan iti Shabhyate. The transcendental existence of God is understood progressively as the impersonal effulgence, the localized supersoul in everyone's heart, and finally the Supreme Personality of Godhead existing in His eternal abode. Lord Krishna's transcendental existence is beyond the qualities of material nature. Thus, here the Lord is referred to as agunasya, without material qualities. Even by practicing yoga or engaged in advanced philosophical speculation, one will find it very difficult to understand clearly the transcendental existence beyond the modes of material nature. And these processes are virtually useless for understanding the Lord's own unlimited transcendental qualities, which are far beyond the impersonal conception of spiritual existence. Only by the mercy of the pure devotees of the Lord, or by associating with the Lord Himself, can one begin the process of realizing the personal feature of God, a process that culminates in pure Krishna consciousness, the final and supreme perfection of knowledge. So, we see that Brahma has recognized Krishna's positions as supreme, and he's also criticized the impersonal concept, as in the previous verse, as being like the empty husk, one endeavors very greatly, and the result is nothing, like the threshing the grains when there's no grains there, and all you have is an empty husk. So the result of the endeavor is rather valueless. So he's, in other words, denigrated the nature of jnana and yoga, which aim at impersonal Brahman. And in this particular verse, he goes back to saying that the yogis, if they take to devotional service and offer to the Lord, then they can attain the Supreme Lord. And then, of course, in this next verse that's got the purport to it, he talks again about the people who cannot realize the Supreme Lord, and instead they understand the impersonal feature of the Lord. So there's always a choice. It seems to be there's a choice in which direction we want to go. We can take to jnana and yoga, and then we generally realize impersonal feature, or we can choose the path of devotion and realize Bhagavan. So this is, we can say, the choice of the jiva. But then, of course, to take to the path of bhakti requires mercy of devotees. So it's not just chance, and it's not just choice, it's actually mercy that gets us the chance to participate in devotional service. Otherwise, as I said the other day, the more common appreciation is the impersonal. Once we're fed up with the material world, and especially if we are intellectual, we'll be attracted to the impersonal feature. And we see that in therefore the people become renounced, they become sannyasis, and then they meditate on impersonal Brahman, whatever, and they study Vedanta, etc. And in the modern world, we have a similar type of mood, we can say, or a movement. In general, people become attracted, if they're sattvic, they become attracted to the impersonal feature. At most. They are fed up with material objects, and then they concentrate on something which is formless and peaceful, etc. And even in science, we'll see the same attitude. Those scientists in general are rather atheistic. Well, some of the scientists, they will have a rather spiritual conclusion, it seems, but then it is impersonal ultimately. So some famous Nobel Prize winners, for instance, will say, they look like they're spiritual or whatever. Well, maybe they're influenced by Buddhism or something like that. So they'll tend towards some impersonal aspect of spiritual life rather than personal. So that becomes quite popular on the intellectual level or the sattvic level of life. To take to and understand the personal feature of the Lord requires the influence of devotees. Otherwise, that won't happen. And now many people may go to the temple and appreciate the Lord, but they're not necessarily real devotees. They just do it out of custom. It's the thing to do because family does it. So we go to the temple and we pray and whatever like that. But they don't have a real conception of anything. And if you mention impersonal, they will also accept that. So they don't have any real preference at all. So to actually be convinced that Bhagavan is a supreme entity, that requires some proper knowledge and some proper acceptance. So that is why the devotees are necessary to do that. A person cannot appreciate the personal feature of Lord just on his own, by his own speculation or conclusion or whatever. He needs the influence of devotees and, of course, the proper scriptures. So the people that take to the impersonal, they may develop beyond that also. It is possible. So the previous verse, this verse here, describes how the yogi, he takes to the process of bhakti and then he achieves the supreme destination. So it may be possible. But then how again? Because he gets the influence of devotees at a certain stage in his yoga process, and then he can attain the Lord. On the other hand, those that don't, they may even perceive the Lord, but then they give up the Lord and they merge into the impersonal aspect again. So that is described by Kapila Dev in the third canto. He talks about the yogis and how the yogis, they want to attain this impersonal feature, but they understand they need the mercy of the Lord to do that, to get that realization. So they worship the Lord, and then they even realize the Lord, Paramatma. But then they give up that Paramatma and they merge into Brahman. They find the Brahman more attractive. So even if they see the Lord, it's not an attractive feature for them. They're more attracted to the Brahman. Why? no association of devotees. Huh? Even if they see the Lord, they're more attracted to Brahman. Huh? So in other words, if they get association of impersonalists or yogis or whatever who are interested in Brahman, they get a similar type of attraction. So according to our association, we develop our sadhana and we get a certain goal, and then we get fixed in that goal, and that's what we want to attain, and that's what we attain. So if we get association of the impersonalists, we end up with an impersonal goal. So of course, by good fortune, someone who is on a path of impersonal sadhana, jnana, or yoga, if he gets the mercy of devotees, well then he can take to the process of bhakti. And of course here the purport mentions that also the Lord himself may be involved. So that was the case of Sukadev. He is described as Atma Rama, which is basically impersonal. He was seeking enjoyment in Atma. And then, because of that, he didn't want to get born. Why come into the material world and look at sense objects and get attracted and whatever like that? Better to stay in the womb and keep my eyes closed from the material world, and I'll be very peaceful. So he went on like that for 12 years or so, and then Vyasadeva got frustrated. So he went to Krishna in Dwarka and told Krishna, you have to come and lecture my son and tell him to come out. So Krishna came, went to the ashram, and then Krishna asked him, why are you not coming out? It's not very natural to stay in the womb like this. And he said, because the material world is all Maya, and if I look at the material world, danger is there, I can fall into Maya, so I don't want to come out. So then Krishna said, well, I promise you, as Supreme Lord, that you will not fall into Maya. So then Sukadev couldn't answer. He had to come out, because the promise of the Lord was there. So, of course, one good feature is he accepted the Lord, and he accepted the promise of the Lord as infallible, so he was able to come out and not get affected by Maya. So, that was the mercy of the Supreme Lord, and then he got the mercy of Vedavyas. So he walked away from the house, of course, because he didn't want to associate with his father, but Vedavyas understood where he was. He was sitting under a tree in Samadhi, concentrating on Brahman in Samadhi. And Vedavyas, by his powers, he's Sarvagya, he knows everything, so he understood where he was. And then he instructed his disciples to go there and recite Bhagavatam. So they went there and they recited Bhagavatam, and then when he heard the topics of Bhagavatam, his Samadhi broke, and he became more attracted to the topics of Krishna. So that is the intention of that Atmarama verse, where it says that even the Atmarama becomes attracted to the topics of the Supreme Lord. So particularly it is Sukadev, who was Atmarama, Indra, fixed in Brahman, and Samadhi. He's like a Jivan Mukta. But he heard the topics through the disciples of Vedavyas, and then he went out of Samadhi. Then he went back to Vedavyas, and Vedavyas taught him the whole Bhagavatam, and he became a great devotee, greater than, more relishing the Bhagavatam than Vyasa himself. So by the mercy of Vedavyas and his disciples, he got mercy, and then he became a great devotee, in spite of being an Atmaram. But otherwise, as Kapila describes, even if they see Paramatma in the heart and they get his assistance to get their liberation, they are more attracted to the Brahman aspect, and they merge into the Brahman instead of becoming a devotee at that stage. So they have to get the mercy of devotees, otherwise they won't go beyond that. So therefore, association is very, very important to get upon this, to overcome this position of the Brahman. So Brahman is manifested also as Atma. The two are more or less equated, even though we know that the Jiva is different from Brahman, because Brahman is actually an aspect of the Supreme Lord. But then we often find that the Atmarama, for instance, one is absorbed in Atma, taking pleasure from Atma. The Citta Pragya is satisfied with Atma, etc. So we will say, and that's called self-realization. So this Atma, Jnana, because it concentrates on simply Atma with no physical features, based on the idea of rejection of everything material, rejection of the body, and the mind, and the senses, and the ego, etc., and everything in the material world, it's basically a rejection process. We're left with Atma, but Atma with no features. So it is the self, but it's a featureless self. There's no speaking, no doing, nothing. So this Atma then identifies itself with Supreme Brahman. So self-realization becomes impersonal Brahman realization. So that's when. So when we see the descriptions of yogis concentrating on Atma in the Bhagavatam, particularly in the third canto, it actually means it's impersonal, ultimately impersonal. Though we may think, oh, he's realizing I'm not the body, good, but on the other hand, it doesn't go any further than that, so then it ends up as Brahman realization. The Atma equates himself with Brahman, the supreme entity, and we end up in that position of this impersonal Brahman realization. So, though Atma realization is good, self-realization is good, it's also dangerous. Because if we just end there, we end up with impersonal Brahman realization, and then we're stuck in that. So it has a good aspect and a bad aspect. So the good aspect, of course, of Atma Gyan, is, as we see in Bhagavad Gita, is that we have to become detached from our material conceptions and fall out of this illusion that I'm the body and everything in this world is so nice. So Atma Gyan helps, and therefore that's what Krishna teaches Arjuna. First of all, you're not the body, you're the Atma, etc. So it's useful in that way. But if we all exclusively do that, and we don't begin to worship the Lord, then we get into impersonal. If it's only Atma Gyan and nothing else, Atma Gyan becomes Brahma Gyan. And then we end up with impersonal realization only. And the Lord with his personal form gets excluded. So one may argue, of course, that, well, Brahman is an aspect of the Supreme Lord, so what's wrong with it? Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, we can have our choice. That is true. And that the Bhagavatam is very generous in admitting that, yes, it is spiritual, and it is a solution for you. Also, it's a type of solution. So you can have Brahman realization, Paramatma, Bhagavan, it's all aspect of Supreme Lord. So it's, in that sense, yes, all one. Whereas, of course, the Sri Vaishnavas and the Madhvas will rather condemn Brahman as being false. There's no such thing. There's either material life or Bhagavan realization, nothing in between. So, Bhagavatam admits, yes, you can come to a Brahman level, get samadhi in Brahman, etc., and get eternal liberation in the Brahman. It's true, in an aspect of the Lord, so it's true, as the scriptures say, that Brahman realization is eternal. But then the other aspect is you can also have Bhagavan realization. It's the same entity, different aspects of the same person. So, why the Bhagavatam therefore condemns that Brahman realization? And the reason is that it's not the full manifestation of the Lord. It's the minimum manifestation of the Lord. So Jiva Goswami says, it is the manifestation of the Lord minus his Sarup Shakti. And it's through the Sarup Shakti that we get a manifestation of the Lord's name, form, qualities, and activities. And this gives rasa. We get establish a relationship, develop rasa, and through that we get ananda. So if we take the Sarup Shakti away from the Lord, we're left with no form, no qualities, no name, no activities, no rasa, no ananda. So what's left? The existence of the Lord. That's it, without anything else. Existence of the Lord. Just like we have the Atma without his material coverings. It's only Atma. No form, no qualities, no activities. So we end up with the Supreme Lord in a minimal state. Existence, supreme existence, beyond material contamination, very peaceful. So yes, it is an aspect of the Supreme Lord, existence of the Lord, therefore we call it the Sat realization. Sat means existence aspect of the Lord. And compared to the material world, of course, it is wonderful. because it's not limited like the material world. Everything in the material world is limited and whatever. But that sat aspect is not limited, it's unlimited and very peaceful and non-material. But compared to the the Lord with his Swarup Shakti, it is actually useless in one sense. Compared to the form of Bhagavan. It is a minimal aspect of the Supreme Lord. A very general aspect of the Supreme Lord. So, if we do a certain type of sadhana, that's what we get. Why do we choose that particular sadhana? We get influenced by certain people who are interested in that particular goal, so we strive for that particular goal just as they do. So, if we're influenced by them, we develop that sadhana, and usually that's the jnana process and the yoga process. They both go for impersonal. And that's what they get. They get that. So, why we choose the personal aspect of Bhagavan? Because it's the complete. The Lord, with his Swarup Shakti, manifesting his form, qualities, activities, name, rasa, etc. Consequently, the experience is better. So this is what we call ananda, bliss. So why is it better? It's because it's more blissful. So this is how the Bhagavatam presents the realization of Bhagavan in comparison with Brahman. In terms of bliss, the Brahman realization is like a drop of water in the desert compared to the ocean of bliss in realizing Supreme Lord. So that, in other words, it's for the benefit of the jiva to choose Bhagavan over Brahman. Not only is it more complete, but the jiva gets more bliss. So the nature of the jiva is he's a bhokta. He should have experience. So he naturally wants the best experience. So what is the best experience? Highest bliss, most bliss. So the jiva fulfills his nature as a bhokta or an experiencer by realizing Bhagavan. So in other words, it's beneficial for the jiva, and we can say it's the constitutional position of the jiva. Because there he can express himself and feel that bliss, which is his nature. So one could choose either Brahman or Paramatma or Bhagavan, but to fulfill yourself to the maximum degree, one should choose the Bhagavan form. So that, of course, is we can say a logical explanation of why we should choose Krishna over Brahman. So most people are not based on logic, of course, and anything like that. They are more or less influenced by other people. So that is why Sangha is very important. So if we associate with the Mayavadis, we become a Mayavadi. We associate with a Vaishnava, we become a Vaishnava. We associate with Krishna Bhaktas, we become a devotee of Krishna. Not based solely on logic. There's some element of logic, of course, but it's often based on the faith of those devotees, their conviction, their action, their conduct, etc. This influences the person as well. So the devotee association is very important to make our choices. So once we make the choice of Bhagavan, then there's another choice. Which form of Bhagavan? So that is also a matter of association. Now, of course, we can say they're all one. Doesn't matter. We can worship any of them or anything like that. And that's also permitted. You can do operate like that, and you can also develop and achieve your perfection like that also, where you accept everybody and you worship everybody in the spiritual world, kind of like that. But that's considered a rather inferior form as far as the Gaudiyas are concerned. The best thing is to dedicate yourself to one form of the Lord and realize that one form, then the experience of the rasa is much more complete. If we have a general what devotion to everybody is kind of halfway between Shantarasa and Dasya or something like that. Huh? So if we dedicate ourselves, then our relationship becomes more condensed, stronger, intense. Yeah? And consequently, the bliss becomes more. So we should dedicate ourselves to one rather than to simply generally worship everybody. And then, which one? So that also, anyone is proper because they're all Bhagavan. So they're all one, they're all equal. So in that sense, equal. But as Nectar Devotion points out, that according to Siddhanta, yes, Vishnu and Krishna are Abheda. They're non-different. They're one because it's all Bhagavan. Difference is the rasa. They both have rasa also. But what's the difference in the rasa? The rasa with Krishna is more intense, more complete in all ways. Higher rasa, which means consequently greater bliss. So just as the bliss of realizing Bhagavan is greater than the bliss of realizing Brahman or Paramatma, so the bliss on realizing Krishna is more than the bliss on realizing the Vishnu forms, etc. That is the conclusion of Bhagavatam. So the whole point of Bhagavatam is that everyone should become devotees of Krishna, that form of the Supreme Lord, rather than Rama or Nrsimhadev or Vishnu, etc. They're all described in Bhagavatam in different cantos with the different avatars, descriptions in different Manvantara periods. But the climax of the Bhagavatam is the 10th canto, which describes in detail the activities of Krishna in relation to his devotees. So this is considered to be the most relishable of all manifestation of Supreme Lord with extraordinary qualities, particularly in relation to his devotees, in a very, very intimate manner. And this gives rise to the highest type of bliss. So therefore the recommendation of Bhagavan is that one should choose Krishna over all the other forms and worship him, even though all the forms of Bhagavatam are wonderful. And then again, how? Association of devotees. Through the devotees, this happens. So if we get association of Krishna devotees, then we tend to become a devotee of Krishna. So it's the mercy of devotees that largely influence what we choose as our goal, and what if we choose Bhagavan, if we choose Krishna, then it's all devotee influence again. So this points out the greatness of the devotee, and that's why the Bhagavatam also, and even Brahma will emphasize the importance of the devotee in the whole process, because it's through him that one actually begins to realize the Supreme Lord, develop an attraction and realize the Supreme Lord. All depends on the devotees of the Lord. So the devotees are, like I say, the instrument of the Lord for spreading his glories throughout the material world. And in terms of Lord Chaitanya's movement, it is spreading the glories of Krishna, largely represented by the Bhagavatam, to the people of this world. So therefore the devotees are very, very important. And of course the other aspect is that Lord Chaitanya's movement is Nam Sankirtan, that for people in general, we can't teach them Bhagavatam because it's offensive. Don't preach to the faithless persons. So the approach is, let them hear the holy name. If they hear the holy name enough, then they get faith. Then we can preach the Bhagavatam. Then we can tell them who Krishna is, etc. So therefore the holy name operates on the most basic level to instill faith in the people. But how is the holy name delivered? Obviously through devotees also. So mercy of devotees is necessary in any case for Harinam, as well as teaching the highest aspect of Bhagavan in the form of Krishna in the Bhagavatam. So in any case, the devotee is instrumental in fulfilling the Lord's mission in this material world of enlightening people. So if the devotee is not there, then what happens? They end up at best with the impersonal form. That's as best they can do, something impersonal. If they don't get that devotee association, somehow get the contact with the devotee. So the mission of the devotees, therefore, is to somehow get access to all of these people in the material world somehow or other, by some means or other, and begin to influence them. They can influence the materialists, or they can influence those who have some attraction for spiritual life in general, and generally that ends up as a Brahman aspect. And influence those people. And in this way they get great advantage. Their goal can change, and they can get the highest result instead of a second result or third or fourth class result. So that is the values of the devotee, that they can give the greatest thing. That was mentioned in the previous verse, the Shreya. The path of Shreya. Bhakti is the path of Shreya, the highest good for the jiva. So the devotees can give that to other people. That's the best compassion we can show for people.
Can we say that this verse is applied only for Jivan Mukta, those who are in the material world, this Nija Karma or Pita? You cannot say this, that it will happen after attaining the Brahman, again they may start their process of bhakti. After attaining the Brahman, impersonal Brahman, they can start.
Yeah, if a person attains a samadhi as a Jivan Mukta, then of course he can take association of devotees in advance, as we say, Sukadev.
Material world, I'm saying the spiritual world, in the Brahman.
If they're in the Brahman and they fix themselves, it's a little difficult because they don't have any senses anymore. How do they associate with devotees if they don't have a form, a particular form? They're Atma without any, spiritual senses. They haven't developed the spiritual senses, so how do they associate? Nevertheless, there is, I think, one verse there in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita there, I think Sanatana Goswami says, even then, the devotees are so merciful that even in that state, somehow or other, they can influence some of those jivas in the Brahman state, and they can become devotional also. But it's rather rare. It's difficult to do because of their particular state, and because of their conviction. They've got that state, and this is so nice, it's eternal, that they don't want to change. So.
Question is that, normally devotees will not go to the Brahman, in that place Brahman, they'll not go there because
they avoid that.
They avoid that.
Devotees avoid that.
So there is no question of going, getting association of devotees in the Brahman platform,
Well, devotees are all merciful, let's say. From the spiritual world, they could influence them. Yeah.
It can be Narada Muni. You can say.
Narada Muni, someone like that.
The choice just gets removed to association. What determines? It begs the question: what determines our association? Is that just random?
Is it random or not?
Yeah. To what extent is the jiva's own desire independent of association involved in any of this, or is it just, we're kind of a blob, and who we associate with, we become like that. And it's
basically the question of free will and how much does karma influence us, how much does environment influences, etc. So one answer is, of course, as far as animals are concerned, they don't have a free will. They have free will, but it's so limited that we don't call it free will. Like they can choose, I want to eat this, I want to eat that, maybe like this to some degree. They can make those little choices, but not real high. And as human beings, if we're in tamagun, we're also very limited because of the ignorance. We don't want to choose really. So it's only when we get to sattvagun that we can really make good choices. So that's why the sattvagun person, he chooses scripture. He's astika. He will choose the scriptural authority, and he will help scripture guide him on what choices to make. So as we go through the gunas, then our free will operates in a better way. Nevertheless, as a human being, in spite of being in tamagun, you got that responsibility anyway, and if you don't do it, you get the karma. Animal, you don't. So, we're limited in free will and tamagun and rajagun to some degree, but still there is a possibility. Therefore, we get the karma to some degree. Now, of course, the Sudras, if they simply accept the instructions of the superior Varnas, then they don't get the karma that way. So there's a little system there in Varnashram by which they can avoid all the bad karmas, and they don't have to make the choices. Their choices are made for them. So that's a good way for, to progress out of a tamagun, so to speak. If you don't have that system and you're in tamagun, right, it's really haphazardous how you're going to get out. So if we're stuck in the guna, it's very difficult as a human being to get out of tamagun and make free choices. We're really controlled by our karmas and everything, the environment, etc. But if we're in sattva, then we do have much better choices for that. And of course, if we didn't have free will, then scriptures would be useless. That's one argument for free will. That what's the use of scripture if it's all karma and we're just controlled by karma? Why scriptures will give us a choice of, to follow the scripture or not. So, yeah, we're quite limited if we're in tamagun, but we do have that choice. So that's there. That's one aspect of the free will.
It was more about the association. I really like the point you made about the sutras. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
But no, that wasn't
as far as
talking,
the
as far as about association, because you repeated many times in your class.
Yeah.
If we have association for Brahmavadis, we're going to go to the Brahman. If we have, even with Bhagavan, if we have association with Ram Bhaktas, we're going to go to Ram, and so forth. What determines what association?
So there's two aspects of the association: our choice, and then of course the mercy of the devotees, what he wants to expose himself to. So as far as the devotees, like in the Madhuri Kadambini, there Vishnu Chakravarti says that the devotee is given the power by the Lord to choose where to distribute his mercy. So that's the free will there. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to preach here. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to preach there. So the Lord, he's not under the control of the Lord. The bhakti is not under the control of the Lord so much. It's under the control of the devotee, where he wants and how he wants to preach, etc. So there's, we could say, free will there. And of course, we also know that the devotee, as he practices bhakti, gets freed from the bondage of karma. So we cannot say, well, the devotee's under the control of karma, so his decisions are all under karma. No, that's also not true, because more than others, more than even a sattvagun person, the devotee should be free of the gross influence of karma. At least, still he's maybe influenced, but at least he's not under this, the clutches of karma like a person in tamagun. So he chooses, and of course his choices are devotional, then they're beyond the gunas anyway. So that's, of course, as far as the devotee, then it's beyond karma, etc. As far as the people who are the objects of mercy, in one sense we can say it is mercy of devotees. It's not karma, obviously. The mercy of a devotee cannot be called karma at all on a person. So it's not by karma that I got the mercy of that devotee or happened to meet this devotee at that particular time. We can't say that's karma. It's the mercy of the devotee. So that's not free. It's not the free will of that particular jiva either. In a sense, it's the mercy of the devotee. But we also know that the Lord is in everyone's heart. So if he sees that there is a slight inclination, he makes some sort of arrangements there so you can meet the right persons, etc. So we can say the Lord helps these jivas who do have a slight interest in spiritual life and makes arrangements for them so they can advance. If they have no interest at all, of course, then we can say the mercy of the devotee. It's only the mercy of the devotee, and nothing to do with the individual at all, actually, because he wants to avoid the devotees as much as possible. So it's only accidental and, determination of a devotee that it would happen. But still, we could say it causes mercy in any case of the devotee. Agata Sukriti.
Unknowingly means someone other he is associating with his devotees.
Yeah. Well, that's for the faithless people. It's a agata sukriti if the devotee causes mercy on a faithless person, and he gets prasadam, or he sees the deity, or he sees Rath Yatra, etc. Then that's agata sukriti.
But he doesn't have this intention.
He had no intention involved. So it is. How does it happen? It's the devotee's mercy, I guess, that happened. So. And maybe the arrangement of the Lord. The Lord's very merciful, so therefore he makes that arrangement. But
because he has no faith, the Lord is minimally involved actually. If you do have a little bit of faith, and we've got some Agata Sukriti already, then the Lord may make some arrangement for that person to help him develop.
You are explaining another thing, this about this, accepting Krishna as a supreme personal Godhead and Krishna's other form, like Nrsimhadev, Ramchandra, Vamanadev. And see, only for Krishna we know that all the rasa manifest, but for all the forms only Daisya rasa maximum. And the other forms, Ramchandra, Vamanadev, and Nrsimhadev, basically Daisya rasa. But they are also self-satisfied. Those who are,
Yeah.
So what is the wrong there? Accepting. What is the wrong? Is there anything wrong that someone
As
accepting?
I said, no, there's nothing wrong. They're all Bhagavan. So in that sense, you can worship any form, and we're not going to condemn the person, as we condemn the Brahmavadis or whatever. So the gap between Brahman realization and Bhagavan is very great. The gap between worshippers of Nrsimha and Vamana and Krishna is not so great. They're all Bhagavan forms, and it's all bhakti, and you always get prema, etc. So it's acceptable. But again, the degrees are there. That's all of bliss. Yeah, because it's prema. It's different than the Brahman. In other words, I said the degree of the bliss content is much greater in Bhagavan any form than in there. So the jiva is satisfied. But there's a greater bliss in the Krishna form than in the other forms. No, he got the appreciation after. He didn't see Krishna, he only heard him, so. And he followed his order to that extent. Yeah? But then he was in samadhi of Atma, so Atma Ram, he was in samadhi under the tree, so he was still in Brahman at that point. And then he heard Bhagavatam, then he became attracted.
No, he listened to Krishna even in the womb, which means he had appreciation of Krishna.
Well, he accepted him, and he
Yes.
accepted his order that much he accepted. Just as the Paramatma yogi will accept the Paramatma feature and get his mercy to get impersonal realization, then he rejects the form and goes off. So he didn't have real attraction for anything Krishna at that point. That's why he left the house and went under a tree and was in impersonal samadhi. Yeah, he accepted his order, so he must have been aware.
Maharaj, accepting Krishna as superior as compared to other forms of Bhagavan, how a devotee ensures that there is no offense also involved in doing so?
What's that?
Not making any offense, despite the fact Krishna is supreme, other forms are not so superior. And at the same time, don't make offense to such forms. Other forms like Nrsimha or Rama, they are not so superior. Krishna is superior.
We accept them all. We don't even criticize devatas. We're not supposed to criticize devatas. That's one of the offenses of the holy name, what to speak of forms of the Supreme Lord. So we don't criticize it, but we understand everybody's position, that's all. So that's not an offense. To say that the devatas have material bodies in their jivas, that's not an offense. So to say that there's different amounts of rasa and different forms of the Lord, that's also not offense.